everyone, I am Dr. Surbhi Onyal and I teach philosophy at the School of Liberal Arts, Bennett University. I welcome you all to the first module of Inculcation of Human Values and Professional Ethics. I am delighted to begin this transformative journey with all of you, a journey that blends the wisdom of ancient Indian civilization with the practical challenges we face as professionals, as a human being in the modern world. So let us begin with a simple but a profound question, that is, what does it really mean to be human? So we need to introspect that what does it mean to be human? And what is that which makes us distinct from other beings? Is it the values that we hold? So across histories and civilization, certain values have consistently been held as the bedrock of civilized life, like truth, love, peace, non-violence, and righteousness. But why? Is it mere chance that every culture, no matter how distant, respects honesty, treasures passion, and praises integrity? If we pause to reflect, we see that these values are not random preferences or simply learned behaviors. They are, in fact, humanity's deepest moral aspirations, principles that transcend geography, language, culture, and even times itself. So these values that I discussed, these are some of the universal values that have transcended these geographical boundaries, boundaries of language, of culture, and even of time. It is something which is timeless. So these human values, whether we talk about sincerity, humility, gratitude, prosperity, trust, faith, forgiveness, or peace, guide our actions and give meaning to our existence. They foster well-being on every level, from the personal to the society to national and ultimately to global. So in every corner of the world, honesty is something which is valued. Passion is respected. Integrity is admired. Philosophically, this begs the question, why do we all independently evolve toward these ideals? It points to a truth that values are woven into the very essence of consciousness, the rational, mindful, and the fundamentally human part of ourselves. Values form the very foundation of civilization. They are what makes us truly human. So the question that I began my lecture with, that what is it that makes us humans? And we can see that it is through these values that form the core foundation of the civilization, and it makes us truly humans. Indian civilization has always placed values at its center. Ancient sages, saints, and seers, they developed traditional and philosophies rooted in values. They might have named them differently depending on language and era, but the core spirit remains unchanged. And we see that different schools of philosophy, especially if we talk about Indian philosophical schools, they have different value systems depending on what philosophies they uphold. But there are something which remains constant. So this spirit, it remains unchanged, whatever philosophical background they're coming from. Now let us take a striking example of this wisdom, which is the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is, the world as one family. More than just a phrase, it is a worldview. Imagine for a moment what it would mean if everyone you encounter is considered a family member. If you apply generosity and understanding not just to your relatives, but to your colleagues, to even strangers, and even those whom you disagree, what would then these values mean to us if we look at each one of us, the other, as someone who is a part of a family, or just like how we treat our family members, how we would treat the other person. It could be a relative, it could be a colleague, it could be your classmate, it could be a stranger, and in fact, most interestingly, even your enemy or somebody whom you disagree. How you would show them generosity? How do you see them as a part of your family? So the idea of unity in diversity forms a foundation for harmony in Indian thought. It is an invitation to transcend boundaries, prejudices, and divisions. But what are values for, if not to fulfill our basic aspirations? Then why are these values? Why are we adhering to values? Or why are we even talking about values? Indian philosophy teaches us that true happiness, that is Anand, and prosperity, that is Samriddhi, are sought by all. But their attainment doesn't lie in material excess alone. So true happiness is an inner harmony achieved when we live authentically, treading the paths of our values. And this inward journey is not in the sense of attaining material possessions or owning a particular kind of car, having a big house, a particular brand of clothes. But this happiness, this fulfillment is in fact which is within you. And that is the true happiness that we need to find, which lies within us. It does not depend on external things. It does not depend on another person or another thing. It in fact is dependent on our own self. So to find happiness, we need to go within. And that is the core principle of Indian philosophy, particularly if you talk about Vedantic philosophy, which talks about the inward journey and which talks about the Satchit Anand, wherein this Anand is realized when you are one with the Brahman. So the individual self is identified with the Supreme Brahman. And the kind of happiness that one experiences is a constant state of happiness. So this type of philosophy and the idea of true happiness is something which lies within you, and you need to look inward. Rather than looking outward for happiness, you need to look inward for happiness, because happiness lies within you. It's not dependent on anything external to you. And these are our Indian values, particularly, as I mentioned, from the Vedantic traditions. Now, you must be wondering that these are some abstract values. How do we apply these values in our daily life? So, expressing values in daily life could be a struggle if you look at these philosophies. But is it really so? So, you might be wondering how such ideas be put into practice. Here, Indian ethos recognizes the limitations of language. Sometimes, word cannot express the subtleties and richness of these values. This is why Indian culture leans on art, it leans on music, storytelling, and rituals, ways to make values tangible and experiential. And that's what you will experience yourself, that a piece of classical music or a classical work of art are more related to our Indian value system, depending on the region you come from, the language that you have. They depict the different value systems and in a more experiential way. For instance, let's say the act of sharing meal, the practice of greeting with folded hands, or the stories embedded in ancient texts. These rituals infuse daily life with meaning and reinforce values. But equally powerful are the lessons we derive from the texts like Bhagavad Gita. The Gita teaches us Karma Yoga, the power and joy of selfless actions. It calls us to perform our duties with integrity without being attached to the rewards. So the concept of tyag or renunciation means giving up self-centered motives and acting for the greater good, as it was beautifully mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. So in the dialogue between Krishna and Arjun, we can see how these values have been beautifully unfolded, wherein Arjun is in a constant state of dilemma, wherein he is not able to decide whether he should fight in the battlefield or whether he should not, because there were his relatives, his family members, his teachers who were fighting against him. And he thought it is not moral for him to fight and kill his relatives, teachers, and his friends. There comes the dialogue with Krishna, where Lord Krishna tells Arjun that being a Kshatriya, the core duty of Arjun is to fight in the battlefield, irrespective of what consequences it's going to bring. Because we can only perform an action in the guidance of the duty, but we do not have control over the results, the consequences. So thinking about what's going to happen and focusing only upon its consequences would lead you to nowhere. And that's what Lord Krishna was trying to emphasize in this dialogue. And he tells by giving up his self-centered motives, because the self-centered motives here in this whole scenario was Arjun's state or mental state to not to kill his friends and teachers. So these self-centered motives have to be renunciated. Now let us move forward to talk about another core value, which is Dharana or focus. Among all these values, there is one value I want to emphasize today. And we will discuss what and why are we discussing this value. So what is Dharana? At its core, Dharana means concentration and unwavering focus. In the tradition of Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, Dharana is the mental discipline of holding the mind on a single point, keeping attention anchored even as distractions swirl around. But let's look at how this plays out in life. Dharana is remaining committed to our principles when situations become difficult. It is the choice to stand on ground for what you believe is right, even in the face of adversities. Dharana is the foundation for the very cultivation and preservation of all values. Without dharana, our ideals, however lofty, remains fragile, easily swept away by temptations, peer pressure, or convenience. Dharana gives us the strength to stay honest while lying seems easier, to be compassionate in the face of criticism, to keep working with integrity even when shortcuts appear tempting. So think of any great leader that you admire. Behind their accomplishments, you will find unwavering focus, a dharana that held them true to their vision and values. In personal life, consider small but significant choices. Choosing up on time or showing up on time, keeping your word, resisting unethical shortcuts. Every one of these is an act of dharana, a practice that strengthens our inner resolve. But how do we cultivate this dharana? So the journey begins with self-reflection. Know what you stand for. Take some time to ask yourself, what values do I genuinely cherish? Where do I refuse to compromise, no matter what? Secondly, you can also practice mindfulness and meditation. These tools help you nurture concentration, discipline, and self-awareness. Over time, you'll find it easier to focus not just on your end goals, but also on the means ensuring you achieve them ethically. And that is one of, again, a very important value, to focus on the means and not on the end goals. As mentioned earlier, that it has been emphasized in Bhagavad Gita that we should not focus on the end, we should not focus on the consequences, because we do not have control over the consequences. Only thing that we have control on is the kind of action that we perform. And that action has to be in the guidance of dharma, that is duty, what you ought to do, what is the right thing to do. And that is where you can introspect through meditation. You can reflect onto yourself that what kind of actions you aim to do or what kind of actions you have been performing. Are they the right actions? Or if they are wrong actions, how can you improve onto them? For example, let's say, imagine you are a student facing a tough exam. There is an opportunity to cheat and peers encourage you. Dharana is the resolute commitment to integrity, the strength not to waver. Or as a professional, suppose you are pressurized to misrepresent facts for a quick benefit. Dharana is staying anchored in truth and accountability. Great epics like Mahabharata are filled with such examples. Arjun's focus on his target, driven by unyielding concentration and resolve, is a classic metaphor for focus. So dharana is not just about personal achievements. It's about fostering harmony within yourself. In families, in our community, and in the wider world. When each one of us keeps our values firmly at the center, we become the agents of harmony and positive change. This is the broader vision of Indian ethos. Living not isolated lives, but as a part of interconnected whole. So, as we open this module and this course, I encourage you to look inward. And the first activity that we have done in the class, which was meditation and showing gratitude, was precisely to inculcate in you the value of gratitude, to help you in your inward journey, to look within yourself who you are and how you are. Because we ask each other, how are you? But do we also ask ourselves, how am I? And this practice of meditation, of knowing yourself, helps you to introspect this question that who am I and how am I? Values, universal and eternal, are the very essence of who we are and aspire to become. But it is dharana, the power to focus and persist, that transform these values from abstract ideals into living realities. It is our anchor in times of confusion, our guide through ethical dilemmas, and the force that can turn good intentions into lasting impacts. With this, we come to an end of our first module, and we will be discussing in the following lecture some such values that we need to inculcate and what are the universal human values that help us in living our life in this community. Thank you so much.